Well, who's authorized to speak for God?
A lot of people claim to be authorized to speak for God, but it's very difficult to know what God actually wants because of all the different people who are saying God wants this and God wants that. And
I think what you're talking about is man-made dogma. You have a lot of people who claim to profess they know what God's saying. They claim to profess that God wrote the Bible, where many people believe it was just a bunch of different people who wrote the Bible. I think the deity is within us. I think deity speaks to all of us, quite frankly. And one of the issues with, say, Christianity, for instance, I'm a recovering Catholic, so I can sort of speak, I think, at least from the way I was brought up. We were taught that you needed an intermediary to the divine. You needed that priest. You needed that pope. They were the ones that were going to be the conduit to God. Well, it's not like that with goddess spirituality. You feel goddess. You feel goddess. And I can say that without a doubt. And so right there, it sort of makes the hierarchy of the church or religious leaders, in a sense, irrelevant. So can you see why they would want to sweep her under the rug? Somebody over here.
I think that women's rights at this particular moment in time are under severe stress. Do you have any thoughts about what could be done to sort of cope with it? I see mine disappearing in front of my very eyes.
Well, it is pretty scary. Well, I think the first thing is women should not support political parties who are going to take their rights away. I mean, I don't have a lot of time to get into politics, but quite frankly, if you're a goddess advocate, you don't support a political party that's going to take your rights away, that's going to support corporations that rape the earth, that's going to take Medicare and Social Security away from elderly people. Goddess is about our being interdependent, our relationships with other people. Okay, it's about the web of creation, and that we are all brothers and sisters, humankind. It isn't about the haves and the have-nots. Riane Eisler talks about domination and control. Women have been dominated for thousands of years, and the strides that we made in the last few decades, well, extremists want to take those away because they still see women as less than men. They don't see the divine in women. They believe that, God was only made in, men were only made in God's image, and, how convenient is that, right? To put one gender above the other. But, that's sort of just, I think, turning the natural state of things on its head basically for power and control. So I think we start with what's happening out there in the world. Don't be complicit in your oppression, basically. It starts with, what you teach your children. What do you say to your family? What books do you read? Who do you vote for? There's lots we can do, but women really have to stick together and not be complicit in their oppression. I think somebody over here had a question. Oh.
I'm sorry. So is Goddessism religion, or is it more of?
I'd say you'd probably call it a very loose spirituality, because you look across the world. Here in the West, you don't hear quite so much about goddess, but in India, they never lost their goddess. She's been around for thousands and thousands of years. The Shinto in Japan, Amaterasu, the last slide you saw, they still venerate a goddess. Native Americans still venerate a goddess. Wiccans venerate a goddess. Many, many cultures venerate a goddess. And let me also say, progressive Christians see Mary and Mary Magdalene as goddess. Okay? They see that feminine face of God. So it's not, you can't think in a little box when it comes to goddess. You don't have all of these rigid rules when it comes to goddess. It's much more of a spirituality, and you don't have that rigid dogma. And it's going to be different from group to group to group.
So it's not just for, it's basically for everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The ideals that I've been talking to you about, partnership, wholeness, balance, equality, justice, that's goddess ideals. So it doesn't matter what religion you are right now. if you believe that, if you live by that, if you try to go out in the world and make the world a better place, using those values, you can call yourself a goddess advocate, because that's what goddess spirituality is about. Anybody else?
I think part of this will be promoted for the feminism. The feminine cause is for men to become more involved, so we don't have this duality and there's a line drawn.
There's actually a lot of men getting involved.
I know that.
All across the world, quite frankly. It's really, you don't hear about it in the mainstream media, but if you know where to look on the internet, there are tons of men who are standing shoulder to shoulder with women because they realize that they have been hurt by patriarchy too. They have been damaged as well. Even though they've maybe had the upper hand, especially if you're a white male, they know it's not right. They don't want to continue to perpetuate the discrimination and the oppression. Look at Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter left his church because he said he could no longer be a part of this group because how the Bible discriminated against women, and it prevented them from realizing their full potential. For the Roy Bourgeois was excommunicated from the Vatican, and right now he's under threat with the Maryknolls because he believes women should be allowed to be ordained. You're having, people are challenging the status quo, and that's exactly what we have to do, because the status quo doesn't work for all of us. It only works for the haves, and I'd venture to say most of us in this room are the have-nots.
I'm sorry, I have to take some real offense to
Sure.
some of the things you're saying. Like what you just said, the haves.
Yeah.
I just want to say to you, I think that you twist things around, number one. By association, you present your case as though, like, the goddesses are behind it, which I don't think is really fair. And I just want to say for the record, so I don't know, okay, that I find about half of the things you say just drive me up the wall.
Well, that's okay,
And
sir.
I just don't think it's, I really would like you to, and I know there's kids here, and I know you're making an impression on them, and I know that their teacher gave them credit to come listen to you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like and I want you to think about this. I just would like you to think, are you really presenting it objectively and fairly? When you say things like the greedy corporation, I'm so tired of hearing that cliche, So I have to speak up and say that to you.
Okay.
Mostly I want to say it one more time and just ask
Okay.
you, just please, I don't think you're being completely honest. I don't think you're being fair. I don't think you're presenting it objectively. I'd like you to do that more, and then because you have some good ideas.
Well, sir, you're entitled
Okay.
to your opinion, and I thank you for offering them, but I don't agree with you.
I know.
Okay? So, and back there?
I don't agree with him either. So, for people like him, it's
Well,
like,
this is scary. This is scary.
with your,
This is, you have to understand, and I have to tell myself over and over again, that change is scary. The way things have always been is comfortable for a lot of people, and if it's benefited them, well, why change? I had a guy on a email list say to me once, why should he care if the Bible discriminates against women? I think there were hands over here.
I think you handled criticism really well. And also, I would like to ask, in the history of the world, has there ever been a time when young girls had more opportunities to do things that they've never, to experience the fullness of life than they do today?
Well, I'll answer you as best I can. Obviously, I wasn't around thousands of years ago, but people like Maria Gimbutas, James Mellert, other scholars, they point to in the past where there were egalitarian societies, where there was balance between the sexes, where one gender didn't dominate over the other, and that's certainly better than patriarchy. Also, too, there are scholars that I rub shoulders with that come on my radio show and stuff like that. that will talk about, for instance, in ancient Greece, how the women were the pharmacologists. They held life and death in their hands. They were the oracles that people went to decide if a country was going to go to war. There are lots of examples of this. The priestesses that ran the temples. There's a curriculum that I teach that the Unitarian Universalists put out called Cakes for the Queen of Heaven, and it talks about in some of these ancient cultures, there were temple societies, where women were in charge of, these societies basically where art flourished, and the society was good. People were enlightened. So I think it's there in the past. You just have to look for it and dig for it, because unfortunately, that's not what the status quo, wants to promote. They would rather have you think that women were always subjugated, so that women will always be subjugated. Over here.
I take position. When I come into this world, a woman brought me into the world. A woman nurtured me during the time. One day, I got married. A woman again in my life. A woman in my life has always made my life comfortable and sustained me with energy to go out and protect and honor and love her. And then when I leave the planet and pass on to the next dimension, a woman will be holding my hand as I die, called a nurse.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So many people just don't even stop and think about that. Thank you. You're a perfect example of how many men just really get it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, I invite you to listen to my radio show on Wednesdays. I have an incredible archive of foremothers, way showers, men and women, who just are founts of information about healing, wisdom, scholarship, philosophy, psychology. That all is about empowering women, empowering men, learning what the sacred feminine is about. You're welcome to join my email list. You'll get notice of articles, events, all different things like that. Of course, I have the books, the tours, and you're welcome to email me as well. I'm always